Yeah, we're live. As you can see, I'm not in my room anymore. I'm actually down at Westech. So we got some cool stuff to talk about tonight. I got all kinds of projects going on. I'm going to adjust my camera just a little bit here. See what you guys are doing. Hopefully the feed will be okay. The internet here is not fantastic. So hopefully we don't have a problem with that. So I'm kind of hoping all of that works out. Go ahead and see what we got going on. Yeah. So tonight we're going to talk about all the things I got going on at Westech. First, the things I'm going to test. Today, the 2.2 liter Dodge arrived, which is awesome. We're going to take a walk over there. I'll show you all those parts over there. I'm also doing right now, you can see, I'll show you. So let's see if you'll be able to see that. Yeah, see the little stripe on there? That's an indexing stripe. That tells us where the electrode is. Actually, for me, I've marked it much to the chagrin of the other people here. But I don't care about where the electrode is. Normally, when we index plugs, we're indexing plugs because we want something to hit that. But what I'm interested in is where the electrode is not and what's open. You know, that's where we're going to get all the power from. So we're going to have a little, we'll have a poll on that in just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to screw this in. Blow up, and then I'm going to take you guys over here. So here's what I want you to look at. So this right here, that's our spark plug. This is the open part of our spark plug. Which way, if we're going to index these spark plugs and make them all the same and make them aim in the proper area in the combustion chamber, which way do we want that aimed? Do we want the open area aimed toward the intake valve, or do we want the open area aimed toward the exhaust valve, or do we want this aimed right in the middle? Do we want this aimed back the other way, which I don't think is a good idea. But which way do you think we should have that? Which way do you think we should have that aimed? So I'm curious to see what you guys have to say about that. I already know which way I'm doing it, so don't be disappointed. But in fact, I'll show you some of the things I got. Yeah, in the house. So actually, Rick from Westech, the owner, showed me this. He went and grabbed this. He said, you know, I probably haven't used this in 25 years, but if you notice, see, it's got threads. This is for spark plug indexing. So what you do, these are going to represent all the cylinders. And what you're going to do is index your plugs, put them in there, so you know where they all go and where they all go in each one of the head and what their position is going to be. So that's what I did today. I spent a bunch of time finding out, because you got to do a lot of different tests. So you can see I went and bought some basically shims. I got copper ones and aluminum ones and stuff. The reason I did that is so that we can get the we can put those on the spark plugs, and when we rotate the spark plug, obviously it's going to stop in the right spot with our electrode in the right spot, in the right angle. We want to be able to adjust it. The problem being when you're trying to index spark plugs is that every spark plug, even though you would think that they would be the same, they're not. So the thread on every spark plug is not identical. The thread on every head is not identical. In fact, I was actually very surprised. I was pleasantly surprised how close they were. I thought that they were just going to be all over the place, but they're actually not, at least the ones that I've tested so far. I tested 4 of them on the motor that I'm going to be running on, which is the L33, the 5.3 liter aluminum motor. But with the different plugs, and I ran all the plugs in all the heads and then put them all in basically arbitrarily. Because when we're doing spark plugs, if we take them out, we usually put them back in the same hole, but sometimes we don't. Sometimes we just mix and match them. They're all the same spark plug. They all go in. They all have roughly the same gap. So I don't care where they go in, because in my opinion, I don't think it's going to change very much, but we're going to find out. So what I did was we put them all in, and I marked them all like we did with this one. We have our little stripe on there. And when I did, I put them all in to find out where they're all going to be oriented. And interestingly enough, there's only about a quarter of a turn spread between where all the spark plugs go in. So we've just put them in, just picked them randomly, arbitrarily, put them in different holes. I might be able to mix and match that a little bit and maybe get them a little closer or maybe a little bit farther away. But the way that they're in now, they all were within basically a quarter of a turn. That's kind of how I'm gauging this by. So the interesting thing is I'm going to test it in a couple of different positions. So that's why I got all these washers, and so that I know how much I was going to move it. One of the interesting things, and this will be in the video that I do when I'm indexing plugs, is if you use a gasketed plug, obviously it has a gasket on it. And then when you tighten it down, you compress the gasket. And so we were thinking we have a bag of gaskets, and if we put another gasket on there, we can change the position. But is a little tidbit of information. If you put another gasket on there, it ends up in exactly the same spot. It's exactly the number of threads for one turn. That's what the thickness is. So that was not fun. I thought, oh, this is going to be very, very easy. No, it's not going to be. So I had to get different thicknesses, and as it turned out, we're not even going to do that. We're going to do something else that's kind of tricky. So it'll be a very cool video. But I will get to test different gasket thicknesses. I also have E3 plugs. I have the Bosch +4 Platinums with the 4 prongs on them. I've got a set of cheap plugs. We're going to do temperature testing. We got all kinds of cool stuff going on. So lots of that stuff will happen, and we'll aim this in different directions and stuff, and see if we have any change in power. I'll also, like I said, a lot of guys have asked, well, what is the change in temperature? You normally run the motor colder, obviously, than we do out on the street. And that's true. The one thing I didn't realize is that when I'm giving the water temperature to you guys that we see on the engine dyno, that's actually in the tower. So the water temperature that we're getting in the cylinder head actually is a bit warmer than that. It's probably 10 or 15 degrees warmer than the temperature we're seeing in the tower. So they're running a little bit warmer, but they're still cold, but not as cold as we were thinking. But I want to skew the test, but I want to run the test with a fairly big change in temperature. So we'll start at, depending on what our water temperature is, it's fairly cold outside, but we could run it like at 120 or 130 and then turn it all the way up to 180 or 200 and show what the difference in power is running at the different water temperatures when the air fuel and the timing stay the same. Because that's a big thing. That's something that a lot of guys don't realize, is that if you have these modifiers in which most people have in their, street-driven vehicle, in your factory ECU, certainly, but even in aftermarket ECUs, you can put these modifiers in. So if you have a big change in temperature, you're going to change the air fuel and potentially change the timing. If you have a change in air temperature, all of these things can affect this, but we don't allow any of that to affect ours. I make the air fuel the same. I don't have all the modifiers are zeroed out, so it doesn't change during the run. I make the air fuel the same at 130 degrees as it is at 200 degrees, if those are the two temperatures. The timing never changes. There's no modifiers to alter anything during the test. So I make sure that those are the same. It's hard for a lot of guys to understand, especially tuner guys that want to chime in and say, oh, but this is changing and this is changing. No, none of that's changing. The only thing, we want to change one thing at a time. We want to change just temperature. What does temperature do when we run one hot and one cold, if all of the other things stay the same? We have to make sure that we go out of our way to make sure all of those things do stay the same. So that will be that test. We're also going to run the different types of plugs, the cheap, inexpensive plugs, and then the really expensive, double precious metal or quadruple precious metal kinds of things. We'll run the indexing. We'll run temperature. I'm going to run side gap and zero gap, I think. we're gonna try that. Again, I don't know how much to expect there. I also have the 2.2, and we can walk over there and take a look at that. Disconnect you momentarily here. Sure, we'll take a walk over. Got some wall. What do you think? Single quad tunnel RAM. This is my box of. So I want you to take a look. First of all, put this down. Look at that. That's like a giant size. To put that into perspective, those are the giant size head bolts. Yeah, not very serious. Not very big. So move around here. We got some pistons, got some new rings that I'm gonna have to gap. We got our bearings. Got our cam pulley. I think the other one is maybe the oil pump, I'm guessing. So we have two sets or two different heads. This is a swirl head. This is the head that will probably go on the 2.5. This is the early bathtub head which came off of this motor. And they've done welding to it and fixed it. And I can't even hardly tell now where the damage was. So that's all done. We've got our gaskets, got our crankshaft, got our bell housing. I was just working with the adapter over there. The block is painted and ready to install the crankshaft and stuff. So all of that's good stuff. Cams are still in that one, and the cam is still in that one. Yeah, so we got some good stuff going on. I'm excited about putting that together. Right now, tonight I'm trying to get the 5.3 liter up on the dyno, so I can get that thing testing. Try to make some changes. The other thing I'm going to do with the 5.3 liter is I'm going to run different intake manifolds on it. It makes pretty good power, but every time that I've run this, we've run the 5.3, the L33. It has a cam in it. It has a Brian Tooley. Right now, I think it has the red hot cam in it, if I remember right. I'll have to check and verify that on the dyno notes. I can't remember what cam is in it, but we'll see what. But I want to run the truck manifold, the stock truck manifold and stock throttle body, which we've been running basically this whole time. And then I want to run the fast manifold. And if there's time, I will also run the Trailblazer SS intake manifold. So we'll do a comparison. I'm kind of curious how much more power. We know the fast is going to add power, and we're up near 450 or 460 horsepower with just the cam and the stock truck manifold and the stock truck throttle body. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when we run the fast manifold. I'm thinking that this might put us up near 480 or something. It should be pretty good. I remember the other test I'm going to do. I'm going to do an oil viscosity test. So we're going to run like a 0.10 or a 0.20 versus a 2050. And then we'll show if there's any power to be had from doing that. That will be good testing. And if there's enough time, and I've done all of the stuff on the 5.3, I'm hoping to put boost to it and run twins from the guys at Max Speeding. And also the Fowler, I think Fowler is the name. It's the right way to pronounce that. His exhaust manifold stuff. So I'm hoping to run that, and if I've got enough time, we have some also some 5 liter Ford stuff, which is really good. So let's see what you guys got going on. So the poll is start a poll. So indexing the plugs make any indexing the plugs make any power? Ask your community. Review is that will stay there and cooperate. We can bring this down here. Actually, kind of a better place to put this. Okay, let's see what we got going on. I'm kind of not digging this. I think you're gonna go back up on the display here. That way it looks like I'm paying attention to people. Because we like that. We like that better. There we go. Okay, now we're rolling. And rolling. We're live. 1 liter mafia's in the house. Squirrels in the house. It's coming home from work. Everybody's doing good. So, what's up, farm? Let's see. Zero difference. I'm thinking middle. Open towards the intake. We need all the likes. Aim that spark plug right down the middle. What's up the quality? Picture quality. Pointing at the exhaust valve. 8 o'clock plug being 12. Easy 50 horsepower. Surface gap the plugs. We do want to try that. I was talking to Mike Miller, who builds race engines today, and he brought up an interesting point. One of the things I forgot about is that when they're running big nitrous motors, which they do a lot of, that oftentimes the metallurgy of the ground strap can be a determining factor on. So he said some of the plugs, and I forgot. We were talking about two specific ones, but there were two of them that he was talking about, and one of them definitely had a more robust ground strap than the other, and that's a double-edged sword. One is that if the ground strap goes away and that's a fusible link, and then you lose power and don't hurt anything, that's good. But also, if you lose the ground strap and you lose power and you lose the race, that's not good. And if you have the spark plug in there that has a better ground strap, that has more strength to it, it will make it so that it doesn't misfire and that you win the race. But it can also not be a fusible link and cause you to hurt something else, and the spark plug doesn't let go early on you. Let's see. Point it towards the North Star. Projected tip versus non-projected tip. I can do that. We have both of those. You should run the cheap eBay plugs and wires that are like $40. Use surface gap plugs and don't worry about it. I've heard that the whole reason Chrysler small block has its spark plug angled toward the exhaust valve is for better combustion. The internet is not great. 2 coils and 2 sparks per cylinder. I always break the hangy things off the spark plug so it stops putting marks on my pistons. That's normally why we do indexing. Richard, I don't know why, but I'm more excited than you when you are at Westech. It is good. It is good times down here. Thinner oil, more horsepower to the driving tires. Just don't blow your engine. It will also be interesting. Horsepower obviously is one thing, but it'll also be interesting to see, because we would definitely expect on the oil test anyway, we'd definitely expect to see a change in oil pressure. So the oil pressure curve obviously would be data locked. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there at the same temperature. What is the difference in power between a Holley dual plane and Edelbrock Performer RPM dual plane? Well, lucky for you, we've tested both of those, and that's already up. The Holley has rec port style and Edelbrock cathedral port. Well, you can't run those two things on the same cylinder heads. So those intake manifolds that have rec ports are designed for rec port heads, and the intake manifolds that have cathedral ports are designed for cathedral port heads. But I'm pretty sure that both of those guys make single plane and dual plane for both of those applications, I think. A carb street legal Suburban. What year is it? Richard, I have a down question. Other than loss and gain through the drivetrain, that would be definitely a 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive. The 4-wheel drive, obviously, if you have traction issues, that would help you with that. There's some outboard motor plugs that take a volume. We talked about that too. The ones with the dome and the on them, and then I think Relay was telling me that it was either Cup or one of those guys, one of the series, uses those mostly so that you don't burn the ground straps off of them. And it also, for some applications, for especially single cylinder applications, it helps. It decreases combustion chamber volume, basically. Richard is frozen. Anyone else? Yeah, Westech internet's not good. Time to continue my losing streak on the poll. Richard, have you ever run any of the TSP 228 RCAMs? No, I think you asked that before. I still haven't. Yeah, the internet's not good here. 2012 Suburban. I guess that means it's not like a big block Chevy where some people bolt an oval port intake direct port out. No, those things will interchange because there wouldn't be actual they wouldn't actually leak, so that wouldn't be an issue. But the cathedral port and the rec port are enough different that that would be problematic. I have the Holly intake on my 6-liter now. I was wondering if I need to put the Edelbrock on instead. I wouldn't change one dual plane for another dual plane. In my testing, there's not a big difference between those two dual planes, so you're not going to pick anything up. Dan, we were talking about indexing plugs because we know that you tell everybody every time you come on here how much power it makes. Because we know indexing plugs is huge power. And I was showing all my fancy plug indexing equipment. I asked yesterday about 4.6 surging at stock, but I capped back in a cold air. It's been doing it for 4 years now. And you're sure it's not a vacuum leak? Or which would be a vacuum leak, the idle air surging, maybe? But what happened to this valve? Actually, this valve right here is in the 4.8 liter, the disaster 4.8 liter, the one that had the bent valve in it. So this one gave its valve life to the other one. It's a spare. Yes, Dan, exactly. Which we're going to be doing E3 plugs and the 4-prong super double throwdown platinum laser. I don't know what they're called. Something. Was that the Manly? I think this is the Manly. Yeah, this is the Manly plug indexing tool. It has lots of dust on it. It hasn't been used in a really, really long time. Do you think Inconel exhaust valves are necessary in a junkyard turbo build for towing? I don't really. I just saw your video on what should I get. Do you answer specific build questions through email? I do, but you can ask your question right here. You should just ask now. You have me here. You have lots of other good, smart people here. If you have a question about your build, you should ask right now. Yep, fires, twin core plug wires. Yep, all of that. That's twice as good. Twice as good. How much difference is there between air gap performer and motor that I didn't know about, but Steve put a RPM and like a 750 on it and a 230 hydraulic roller cam. And he was really happy. It made like 490 foot-pounds or something. Jesse, my dad, said he used to index plugs on his big block Nova drag car. I was in a rush one time and didn't do it. And he said he's never done it since. Yeah, that happens. Indexing plugs, like I said, when we do it because we want it to miss something that would be coming up and hitting that, most probably a dome on the piston. And so you either will take a Dremel and notch out the dome so it doesn't hit that. and this is particularly the case, and I'll show you in some of the videos that this is probably a gasketed plug. Yeah, this is a gasketed plug. So this extends into the combustion chamber, not nearly as much as some of the other plugs, particularly the E3 plug. In fact, I'll show you that. Diamond Fire technology. I'm excited about it. I don't think I've ever tested this. So if we look at that, that's probably better. So you can see that the split fire sticks up a lot more. So it'd be sticking into the combustion chamber a whole bunch more than this plug. And I thought, that's a lot. I mean, that's a big difference. But when you compare this to like a tapered seat plug that you would have on LS, it actually sticks up about that far too. So they're a little basket deal. The other thing I'm going to do, you can see that. Yeah, you can kind of see that. So what I'm going to do also is I'm curious as to what the gap is, because I can measure the gap up to this like cross bridge thing, and see what the gap is on these split fire plugs, because everybody knows how much power a gap makes, right? We got the gap. NGK laser platinums. Yeah, these are the laser platinum +4s or whatever. Will an 8.5 to 1 compression 408 be able to make 1,000 horsepower with boost? Yes, on 93 octane. No meth. Where would you think it would be at? I don't know about the 90. I think Nelson does that stuff. I've yes, but other people have. A few years back, I tried testing indexing plugs back-to-back testing on my Spec Miata, same day, same conditions. My results showed next to no difference at the rear wheels. You did it on a chassis dyno? Auto lights always seem to work for me. I like Delcos too. My 383, I had AC stubbies due to the headers. Yeah, that's pretty common. What's the safe timing degrees for a 5.3 twin GT35 street car with 7 pounds of boost? What fuel is that? Nathan, did you check and see if you have a broken spring or something there? What is the best head for a 6.2 LS engine? The ones that you have on it already are really good. Those are 650 horsepower cylinder heads. So unless you're making that much, you got enough cylinder head to do what you're doing. Amos, what's going on? So Travis, you like the NGKs, TR55s, TR 5.5? I had some platinums, but they were like $2 each at Rock Auto. That's pretty cheap for a platinum plug. Those things are pretty pricey. What valve train parts would you upgrade on a 5.3 for Bonneville? I don't know that Bonneville specifically would be the reason that I would running, and what RPM are you running? So that would dictate 6,000 RPM. Really, the stock stuff can do that. If you're running more than that, then you start saying about valve train. But certainly, I would do stock rockers, but with trunnion upgrades. I would probably put push rods in it. I definitely would do springs in it, and obviously, you're going to do a camshaft in it. Gapping it like David Letterman. Nice. Run a 150 shot with those E3 plugs. I run split fires because they're cool. You hit your passing gear and you're gone right now. I have an 02 Silverado. That's 4.8. I'm going to buy myself a cam for Christmas. Nice. Eventually want to turbocharge the truck and make at least 1,000 horsepower because we all need to have 1,000 horsepower. Hopefully, one thing you need to think about, Jonas, is your 4.8 liter truck can make 1,000 horsepower, but you don't have 1,000 horsepower rest of the truck. You don't have 1,000 horsepower transmission or rear end or drive shaft or brakes or tires or any of that stuff. So think about that. Did any of the LS truck intakes come with rectangular ports for the LS3? Yeah, lots and lots of them did. The LY6 is a rec port headed truck version, and I think the L76 or 77. There are truck versions with the rec ports, and when I tested it, it made the same, almost exactly the same power as the LS3 intake manifold does. Brian said that they tested them, and the truck manifold made more torque. I didn't see that in any of my testing, and I've tested those two intake manifolds. I've tested them 5 times and it's the same every time. Poll, tapered seat spark plugs versus gasketed. We can easily do that test. I doubt that you'll see that much there, but we can test it. So will indexing spark plugs make any power? 63% are saying no. Laser platinum. Sharks with freaking laser beams. Strip Dominator versus Victor Jr. on a small block Chevy. I don't think Roulet's probably done that test. I don't think I have. I was talking to him about the big block stuff, about the single plane big block test that they did. Yeah, Amos is famous. He's famous Amos, although he doesn't make cookies. You need to clean the fine wire sensor on your MAF, not the connector. The oil filters deposit oil on the sensor over time, and they will cause mixture issues eventually. I think that's what I need to do on mine. I think that mine needs to be cleaned because I did have a K&N in there, and it was really bad. Your audio cut out when you answer my 8-to-1 compression. Can you repeat? Yes, I've never tried to run 1,000 horsepower on pump gas. I've never done it, but other people have. So yes, you can do that. Do you flow carburetors at 28 inches like everything else? If you look at the video that it doesn't flow enough to do that. We convert it to 28 inches. And the reason that I did that is because I wanted to directly compare a 2-barrel and a 4-barrel at the same depression to see actually and you can watch the video where I tested all those carburetors so you can see what they flow at. Do a before and after compression test on each cylinder. On what? How about the auto fouler things you sell in the help section? I buy them to make O2 sensor bungs. I had to use one of those on my old Camaro because a ring had broke and had actually rotated and wore a groove in the cylinder, and it burned so much oil that it would just kill the plug. And so we put one of those little foulers in there, and it actually would help the thing last and would keep firing. I mean, I don't think you're going to make as much power, but. What do you think about a 6-liter with ported heads, 243 heads, and a fast intake and a stage 3 cam? That's a good combination. It'll make good power. Four-barrel carbs are rated at 1.5, and 2-barrel carbs are rated at 3 inches. That's why I wanted to flow them at the same depression so that we could see what they really flow. Vizard had a mystery gain on an engine dyno test in one of his videos. What was he testing? Changed IAC, TPS, MAF, charcoal vent, and started before he had a misfire in cylinders 5. An unmeasurable power increase. Well, how does he know that there's a power increase if it's not measurable? So if it appears on the dyno, it was measurable, right? Or is it unexplainable? Like he didn't know why it happened. What do you think of the Phytech LS ECUs? I've never run them, so I don't know. L92 is also a rec port, but most people don't know that. Yeah, the L92 is. Yes, I plan on upgrading the rest of the drivetrain. Yeah, horsepower. It's not hard to do, even with a 4.8. A 4.8 is just a cam and springs and the right turbo on it, and you can make 1,000 horsepower. Unfortunately, as I found out, Barrel 60 trans don't even like stock power output. Richard, any relation Project Farm guys on YouTube? Both of you do great results of testing. If I squint a little, I can see some resemblance. Project Farm? No, I haven't done anything with those guys, but I do watch their stuff. Camming intake, the 5.3, 6,800, 7,200 RPM through the time slips. Bonneville just wondering what will fail holding it there for that long. Well, you're not going to be at that RPM until the end of the run or toward the end of the run. You probably won't be able to put all of that power down. I don't know if this is boosted or what the deal is. But certainly at the front part of the track, you're not going to be able to put all that power down. So you'll only be going that RPM for a certain period of time. But 7,200 shouldn't be a problem with the things that I mentioned. When you flow a carb on a bench, you only flow one venturi at a time. That's not what I did. I put E3 plugs in my Scion and it picked up 1 mile per gallon. Thanks for all the great information. You're happy to help. Safe timing degrees for 5 GT35 93 octane. I don't know. I don't know what else is the rest of what else is going on in your car. I don't ever run those on pump gas. But according to Matt at Sloppy, on pump gas, 14 degrees of timing and 14 pounds of boost seems to be a safe combination. What gap for a 351? Like we always talk about, it'd be 6.5 thousandths per inch of bore. That's going to be a 4-inch bore or 430 or something, depending on if you've machined it. E85 versus race gas for big nitrous use. I think that they were running that motor made 11 or 1200 today on nitrous. I think the big block that they're running, and I think that they're running 112 in it. And if it's a very high compression motor, I think the chances are good that you would be making more power NA with the E85 than you would on the race gas. You certainly could. Try not to move too much. Your internet is too slow to keep up. I can't just stand here. Then people are just looking at me. Nobody likes that. Would you recommend a 4L80 instead of a 4L60? Yes. The converter is not going to help the 4L60 strength, so that's not the way to go. Have you ever got a set of Rick Crawford heads to test? I don't think so. I had a cheap Gran Torino. Those are cool with 351 Windsor. Gobbled a quart of oil every 50 miles. That's excessive. Dave, I don't know if Westech has that. I've never tried it like that. We don't flow carburetors very often here, but I wanted to see what the total flow was. I didn't want to do one Venturi, and I didn't want to test boosters either. We weren't trying to figure out whether the carburetor was working. I just wanted to see how much it flowed. Indexing plugs has already been proven to increase power for years. I don't think that that's the case. Do you think it would be fuel pressure injectors? I also have to run 93, so it doesn't surge so bad. 97, 87 will shut off every time I stop. By changing fuel, the motor is shutting off? That doesn't seem right. Especially if you're coming to a stop, there's no detonation or anything. Why would the fuel change that? Richard, how big of a crack in your header manifold does it take to make a big difference in maximum boost? That's actually a good question. It's one of the things I wanted to test for years and years and years. And the reason I have been wanting to test it is way the big precision turbo, like 1,500 horsepower turbo or something. And we were running it on an LS, and I only had one wastegate on the setup that we had, and I was having trouble controlling the boost. So we just started taking the O2 sensors out, the fittings that we had. And in fact, I think we had Troy weld a couple more in, and we took those out so that I could control the boost. And so ever since then, I've been wanting to know how big the leak needs to be to where it starts affecting boost. Now, this affected boost down low and ultimately allowed us to make the maximum amount of boost that we wanted to make because it still had a rising curve. And it allowed us to make the amount of boost that we made at the top. So it had an effect, certainly on spool, even with one or two of the O2 size fittings in it. So we know that will do that. But a small crack will not be very much. Richard, my question was for spark plug gap. Yeah, plug gap. Oh, plug gap. I would put it around 19 or 20 thousandths. Are you running LS coil packs on the 2.2, 2.5? We're running a distributor, and we're using the distributor and an LS crank sensor because it's a 4-pulse wheel inside the distributor, and then the distributor will distribute the spark and tell us where number one is, and then we're running a single coil. But LS coils would work very well if you have if you can run it sequential. Pontiac question. Never got an oddball setup. I've been trying to. I got a car with 462 heads. I'll ask Brule, or no, I'll ask. He might know which direction are you to do it. Solid lifters on a hydraulic cam. I'll ask if they've done that on the type of stuff. Got an old school 350 with flat tops because it was set up that way. Not a lot left. Mike, you don't want to tell Tim to run his plug gap at 40 under boost. That's not a good idea. Richard, can you send Nathan my contact information by private message? Perhaps I can help him. Yeah, you should have just posted your email address, Mark. But Nathan, I'm going to put my email down here, and you can. And then Mark Sanchez might be able to help you out. What's the best bang for the buck on a 500 to 600 horsepower injector setup? Is it a 4-cylinder? Is it an 8-cylinder? The 80-pound Decas are kind of the go-to for that range. Panel, my Monte Carlo, going to manual, swap it as well. Gear ratio, do you think 276 rear end gears are too tall? Are you wanting to get really good fuel mileage? I think a 276 gear and an overdrive trans that you would have, it's probably going to be a lot of gear. You probably don't need that. I don't know what 5th gear is or what 4th gear or 6th gear, whatever your manual you're putting in. That would give me a better idea. And that and tire size would help me decide a better answer to your question. You don't need 40 or even 30 thousandths plug gap for a boosted LS or a boosted anything. That's not going to help you. Watch out for a cracked coil. The car will drive so far then suddenly die. Always have at least 2. Let's see. Always thought of indexing plugs will increase power if it increases the efficiency of the spark to increase the efficiency of the fuel burn. How does it do any of that? That's my question. 454, 100 over, 750 horsepower. Would you hit with a 200 shot of nitrous? What size bore? Size of a bore expected to hold up? Do you have enough wall thickness there? And you're making 750 horsepower with a 454? That's pretty good. Jonas, what was your question? I did answer your question. I'm scroll back and I'm scrolling and scrolling. Jonas, was your question about the camshaft? I thought we answered that. So what was I don't remember what the combination was now. Max effort comp solid roller 468 13-to-1 head. I can't estimate power based on the information that you gave me. I don't know what the head flow is. I don't know what the intake is. I don't know what the cam timing is. I don't know any of that stuff. Yeah, Sam, the 383, the stroke of the 383 is not a thing that's going to determine power or RPM potential. I got to plug my thing in. The Vizard mystery gain was a 1300 supercharged mini, a gain of 50 horsepower. So David didn't know how, did it just all of a sudden gain 50 horsepower? Did they, did it pick up one full cylinder? If you build it, they will come. Would you recommend to spec a cam? So for what application, John? Would indexing spark plugs help fuel mileage? That part of it is something that I could believe. And actually, split fire thing is also something that I would be much more likely to believe, or I believe it, I think it's the right word, changes in emissions or drivability or mileage thing, more so than power. Indexing the plugs alters compression ratio a little, invalidating the test. That's actually true. If we take this spark plug and put a, I'll show you. So we take, I'm not using this washer, by the way, but if we take this washer, which is pretty thick, this one's copper, and put it on this spark plug like this, we've moved the spark plug that far back in the chamber, and so it's that much distance. We're changing that right there. So you are changing the compression ratio. Is that even a measurable amount if we were to CC the head? Be an interesting thing to test. And how much power would that be? Would that be less than 1 cc? Would it be half? Would it be a quarter? You know, how much would it be? What's the best intake to run? AFR 300, oval port heads. Those are good heads. RPM 3,500 and up in a 60, 67. C10 Pro Street truck. What did you tell me what camshaft is in it? Like what RPM range you're running? If it's low RPM, I wouldn't be opposed to running an RPM, but most people would pick like a single plane 454R or something like that. Side gapping plugs works really well. So Dave, here's my question to you. So people's definition of side gapping a plug are different. So can you see that? Can you see that? Can you see where that's gapped? So that center electrode or the ground strap ends in the middle of the center electrode. So do you want to draw that electrode all the way back to it's even with the side? Do you want to cut the electrode off altogether so it's jumping from the center electrode out to the, well, or whichever direction it's going, until it's jumping from the center to the outer ring or from the outer ring to the center? What is your definition of side gap? Used to be able to buy plug washers in different thicknesses from Champion. Yep. Change the compression ratio from 11:1 to 10.999 to 1. That's it, Dave. Does a Cobra intake fit the 462 valve or need adapter plates or Holley Sniper intake for it to be better? A Cobra intake doesn't fit a 462 valve. Only a 4 valve. If you're talking about the 4 valve Cobra, if you're talking about a 5 liter, then it obviously only fits that Windsor family. Richard, at what point would you consider changing the factory K24 camshaft when using a turbo? It would depend entirely on your power level, how much power you want to make. If you have a turbo that you can already max out the power output of that turbo, why would you change the camshaft? Because you can do everything that turbo does. We talked about that with camshafts for LS things too. I pick a mild camshaft. The factory K24 cam already makes a really high specific output. That motor's already really good. And it has a mild cam and then a bigger cam, a VTEC cam. So it makes a lot of power already, even in stock form. So if you can max that out, if you're building a race motor, then I would definitely put cams in it. What's your opinion on Scat Forged LS rods? I think that they work good. Video is named Mystery Gains and Losses. I'll have to ask David about that story. He's never told me about that. What would be a good bolt-on replacement for the spider injection on a 4.3 Vortec? I don't know if they does Mercury Marine have a 4.3 aluminum intake for that? You cut the ground wire to line up to the side. Yeah. See, I was wondering. So zero. What is it? So then zero gap would be to go all the way to the side, which I also want to try, just because we should and we're there. Drag car, 8th mile, 414, small block, 2,600 pounds, race ready with driver, 14-1, dart, 220 comp, max lift. So do you already know that? Have you already run that, John? Do you already know what mile an hour and stuff it runs? If you know the weight in the mile an hour, you know how much power the thing makes. I fixed misfire complaints on 2000 vehicles by removing the split fire and 4-prong Bosch plugs and put no new OEM replacements in. The factory plug in a LS, we know lasts a long time. We know it lasts 100,000 miles, certainly, at least. Some of them, I'm thinking that some of the ones I've got from the wrecking yard are just the original plugs that were ever put in that motor. I don't even think people did plug changes on them. So Eric, you know that a Chrysler plug will hold the Honda SL350. Richard, what's your favorite Ford engine and why? I don't know. Can I pick Boss 302? Bam, 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 bam. I've definitely seen OEM plugs with 100,000 miles on them with over 100,000 scap. Some of the factory stuff is really, really big. I mean, it's not at 100. That at least I don't remember any that big, unless they were the like double platinums and they got the little button on the ground strap, and then that gets worn off all the way. Can I scale 120-pound injectors to run my 5.3 NA before? We run 1500s on the 4.8, so that won't be a problem. Jonas, I'll try to email you tomorrow. Okay. Yeah, just let me know what your question is. My first car was a 4.3 S10 Extreme. Screwing a plug-in one less turn changes combustion volume by 1/4 of a cc. So you've done the math. Oh, John, this is a new build looking for recommendation on something. Okay. Well, I put my email in the comments already. Just send me an email. Dave, Richard, did you ever get your hands on an Autolite 985 plug? I haven't. I really need to check it out. I'll have to put that on my list. Regular is a foreign concept to most people. Cars are appliances. They're like toasters. You should have seen the looks I got before I came down here. I popped the hood. Didn't even know that the hood opened on their cars. I popped the hood and checked the oil because it's an old car and it uses oil. And so I checked the oil before coming down to Westech. And I thought, that's a little low. It'll make it. It'll be fine because I'm going to change the oil anyway. So why would I put new oil in if I'm just going to change it? But you should have seen the people at the gas station. They're like, that guy's crazy. Stay away from him. Herding their little kids away. Don't get near the crazy guy. Remember the Honda commercial showing the guy welding? Did you guys see the F-150 with a Whipple that Cletus is giving away? The Suburban plugs were double platinum. You could probably get away with gapping them. Probably so. 2 more minutes. I obviously have stuff to do. I've got to put that 5.3 up. Doing a Hemi swap into a 67.4. I'm trying to figure out how to keep the console shift without going column shift for the X Police Charger. Those Hemis work good. They make good power. It'll be a big change for people that have driven a, you know, what is that, a 66? So it could be a 302, might be a 390, which would be good in a 67. Getaway. We went over all the stuff we were testing earlier today, or earlier in the show. Bam, 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 bam. Makes me want to fix this and put it back on. This one I thought had a crack. I thought this one had a crack between the cylinders, but it doesn't. Looks like it's okay. Yes, he's okay. Look at that. That intake's all clean. That's clean as a whistle. It's always the exhausts that are terrible. They're all pitted and stuff. Man, I should have just put this cylinder head on instead of that junky one. Man, those intake ports are like minty fresh. That's how I test run out, by eyeballing it. Bam, bam, bam. What's the most compression you've seen on an LS motor? Run is like 13 and a half probably. So I've opted to get my LQ9. To get this LQ9 my friend had, and I'm going to do away with my old L31. I really want to get the stupid nitrous car idle and cam recommendations. I'll be spraying it. Okay, guys, time to go. I need to close out our poll. And I didn't ever do live chat. Why didn't somebody recommend the live chat thing? Maybe that's why I didn't see all of the. That's why I didn't see all of the poll questions. So I'm going to get rid of my. I'm going to end the poll at 61% saying no and 39% saying yes. Only hearing bits of it. Uh-oh. We got a bad internet connection. But I will see you guys all tomorrow.